Well, welcome to this Lent 2021 series. Before we begin a conversation with Lisa, I want to just say a few words about where this series came from. Uh, Lisa and I were having a discussion several weeks ago about what we might do during Lent, and we were talking about Ash Wednesday. And we were reminded that Ash Wednesday is a service that really has two different components. One is a focus on sin and forgiveness as we begin Lent to get all that stuff off our hands. But the other component of Ash Wednesday really is this embrace of our mortality, that when we receive the ashes of Ash Wednesday and the person giving us the ashes says, remember that you are dust and to dust you shall return, that we are embracing our mortality. We are beginning Lent by remembering that what God called us to be was human, and part of being human is being mortal. And what resonated with both of us is during this COVID time when we are so aware of the fragility of human life, where there is so much death. We've gone over 500,000 cases now in this country, that this would probably be a good time to look at this issue and see how we can not live in fear of death. Most people live in fear of death. They deny death. Ernst Becker says that most of us have an immortality project. We just want to live forever and think we can do that, but life is short. And so we decided to have a series in which I would begin by interviewing Lisa, who of course has confronted her mortality in a marked way over the last year, and then have a few more conversations, all of these recorded, until the final session, the fourth session, when we have an interactive Zoom session. So we hope you'll join us for these sessions. Of course, if you have any questions along the way and you want to email either of us, feel free to do that. And we'd love to have a conversation. Although she probably needs no introduction to most of you, I just wanted to introduce Lisa. Of course, I didn't even introduce myself. If you're on here and you don't know who I am, I'm Roger Greene, the rector of St. Timothy's. It's good to have you here. And Lisa Bernheisel is a ordained pastor in the Lutheran Church, was ordained 17 years ago. And we were blessed to get her in the fall of 2018. The Lutheran Church and the Episcopal Church are in full communion. And when we were looking for a pastor, God sent us what we needed. And Lisa started in December of 2018. And then, as many of you know, in March of 2020, was diagnosed with stage 4 colon cancer, just at the Tuesday after our last in-person service. So I want to basically just ask her some questions and we'll just see where this goes. This is not planned out, and I am not Krista Tippett. But we are delighted to be with you and hope that we can gain some freedom during this series. But let's begin with a prayer. Almighty God, you have created us out of the dust of the earth. Grant that during this Lenten season, we may remember that it is only by your gracious gift that we are given everlasting life through Jesus Christ, our Savior. Amen. So Lisa, I want to begin by just asking you to tell us what happened back in March and your reaction to that. I'll ask some questions along the way and we'll just see where this goes.
Sounds good. Thank you, Roger, for inviting me to share, and to all who are listening. It's good to be with you in this way. In early March, I wasn't feeling too well, and so my doctor and I had some ideas about things, and she ended up sending me for a CT scan on St. Patrick's Day. It was the day after my children started that remote learning because of COVID. And so I feel like so much of my journey is a parallel to this COVID experience in some ways. And I went for the CT scan, I came home, things were fine. And then I got a call around 4 o'clock that day. And my doctor said, Lisa, come to my office right now and bring your husband. And she didn't say anything else than that. And I knew it wasn't good. And so I told my children, I don't know when I'm going to be back, but I had to go to the doctor now. And they just had uncontrolled screen time. So I called my husband, and he came and picked me up. I knew I couldn't drive at that point, fearing the worst, wondering if it was something like what it would be or not, just uncertain. And so we drove there, just holding hands and wondering, okay, we go to the worst. And when we got the doctor's diagnosis, she said, Lisa, it's just not good. Like, you have a tumor in your colon. The CT scan revealed a huge tumor in your liver, like 10 inches or 10 centimeters, inches, but centimeters, and throughout your lungs. And at that point, I looked at her and I said, does this mean I'm dying? And she just looked at me, and I said, so I'm dying, like right now, actively dying. And she didn't say no. And at that point, I couldn't really hear anything else. And that's when, thank God for partners on the journey. And so my husband was there and just held my hand, and I looked at him and I said, honey, and he just had tears in his eyes. And I've been married 22 years, and I rarely see my husband cry. So it was really scary, incredibly scary. And so she said, I'm just going to leave you in here. You can stay however long you want in this room. And I'm going to go, and I'll come back. And so in that time, we just like held each other, and we had been together. Like, I was 15 when we started dating. It was just that sense of, how can this be? We wanted to retire together and enjoy life together. And we felt like all of that was like taken away. And so my husband's well connected and ended up getting an appointment the next day with our colorectal surgeon, and an emergency CT scan and a colonoscopy. And then the day after that, the port insertion and the oncologist. It just all happened so quickly. It was overwhelming. And I didn't even know what to think. So I was just in shock. And we got back home that night. And I remember coming home and knowing I had to be honest with our children and telling them, guys, it looks like I'm dying. I don't know how long I'll have left. And at that point, we just started crying for like 3 days straight. And I just called their teachers. I'm like, yeah, I don't know how this is gonna go. So we just held each other and wept for not knowing. And all that I had to go through those days, it was so scary, and it was so immediate, and it was so cold, and it was so bright, and I could hardly even think. I was awake when they put in the port, and it was really scary. And I just kept praying, God, help me, be with me. I can't do this on my own. And God continued to send me signs. My friend before that had posted, like on Facebook or something, look for the crosses in your rooms. And so I was like anxiously looking for them. And you can find crosses on just about every single ceiling tile at University Hospital and Christ Hospital and in my oncologist's office. They're there. You can see them. And just that reminder of the cross, and like, no matter what I was feeling, that Jesus had felt that, and that he was there with me. And there was one point where it was really painful. Like, it wasn't feeling good. And I almost felt like I was like hovering above my body and Jesus like came in and took it on for me. It was very profound. And I'd never had anything like that happen to me before. But that was such comfort and consolation, and just feeling the presence not only of Christ, but of all the support of the family, the church community, like all there in the waiting room with me. I just felt held and supported in that, and that I was not alone, because the scariest thing I thought about when thought I was going to die is that I would be alone and I would be separate from love. Like I was just all alone, and that was so scary to me. And when I started to really pray into that and think about that, that was my greatest fear of death. And yet in every single time and in every single place, God was there and bringing angels upon angels. And so when I went to my oncologist's office, I was so scared. It was like, I never thought of myself as a cancer patient. Like, what? I was a healthy woman. Like, I walked a lot. I was a mom doing all these things. I have this job, all of this stuff. Let's do this. And then, no, you're a cancer patient. What? Huh? And I've seen pictures of cancer patients. I don't want to be that. You know what I mean? And like, I've been and accompanied people through their cancer journeys. And I sat next to them while they were getting their infusions. And I didn't want to be the one in the chair. Oh my gosh, I wanted to be anywhere else. And yet this was the path forward, because there was so much in so many places. And I was so scared. So I walked into the oncologist's office, and an amazing gift was given to me through St. Timothy's, is that one of our parishioners works there, and she greeted me at the door, and it was just like, oh, we all had masks on. I mean, you know, it was COVID time, but I saw her eyes sparkle and that warm, welcoming glance, and I'm like, oh, she's here. I can do this. And it was just like, oh, it's going to be okay. I had this beautiful welcomer to this space that was really scary, because I didn't know if the chemo would work, how my body would respond to the chemo. And it was totally unknown, because not a good diagnosis. That has a really high death rate. And so how would it go? But she was an angel. And then in the chemo room, the nurses were amazing. They just showered me with warm blankets, and they made me feel so incredibly loved. And I was getting my infusion. My oncologist was one who gave me like, oh, you know, a little bit of hope, because he's just like, well, I don't know if you're going to die tomorrow or when. None of us do. I could walk out the door and die from, you know, a car accident. You know, you just never, none of us ever know how long we have. And he said, I've seen amazing results from this treatment regimen. And I've seen results that led to things that were unexpected and that weren't what the people hoped for, but we tried all we could. And so he said, I have a plan, and I've seen this before, and I think you're healthy. Let's see what happens. And so that was really hopeful to hear that there was a plan, and that he had seen others live a long time with this reality. And I'm like, oh, okay, you know, so entertaining that notion that perhaps I could live with this condition. But still, throughout all of the tests and the procedures, the chemo and everything, I was confronted again and again with this reminder of death. And there was no denying it. It was like in my face with every test result as I waited. Okay, what is it going to say this time? And I feel like I gave those tests more power than I should have, because really I feel healthy. I don't feel like I'm going to die. And yet, I didn't even know that there was a 10 centimeter tumor in my body. Like, I had no idea. And yet with each test, there was that reminder of death. And so instead of running from it and being afraid of it, I needed to dance with it and to really kind of befriend death and say, you know what, you're not so scary. tell me, I'm afraid of being alone. And then death was just like, yeah, you're going to be alone. And I'm like, but wait a second. I wasn't alone in the waiting room. And I wasn't alone when I was getting my port in. And I wasn't alone when I was having my colonoscopy. I saw those crosses and I was not alone. And so when I continue to remember all those amazing abiding presence of God moments, then death got less scary. And we decided, oh, we'll dance a little bit. Okay, what else are you afraid of? Well, I'm afraid of not being remembered, like forgotten, like she's gone. Okay, we're going to move on. And like that made me really sad to think about, especially with my children and my family. Oh my gosh, right? And yet, knowing that they are part of me, and no matter what happens, like I have been part of their lives, and we have these amazing inside jokes and stories, and that will live on. And then the love that my husband and I share, it has been a wonderful thing. And and now, with not knowing how long or anything like that, savoring each moment with each other and being like, wow, this is another memory we get to create. And so it is that gifted teacher that cancer is. It's a
Mm.
horrible, painful, awful thing that I wouldn't really want to have my worst enemy. I don't really have enemies, but anybody have to go through. And yet it has taught me the gift of
Mm.
being my true self. And it has
Mm.
taught me to truly savor this gift of life that God offers and not wish it away or hope it away, but really live into each moment as
Mm.
God has given it. And so, to even the annoying ones where I'm like, not really wanting to deal with my kids fighting or whatever. It's like, okay, this is a teachable moment. Do I have energy for that? Okay, we'll see. God guide me.
So would you say this? I've had people say to me who have had cancer diagnoses and treatment and all that. More than one has said to me that cancer was the best thing that happened to me. Um, and of course, when I heard that, I was puzzled. They then explained why. Would you say that's been true for you in some sense?
I think I would, because it really has helped me know where to focus my energy and help me realize the gifts that God has given that are right in front of us. And before, I did savor those things, but it was different. And I have a freedom now to like, I, I'm going to say what I want to say. And before I was like, ooh, how is this going to be perceived or whatever? And I was very cautious. And that inhibition is pretty much gone. And it has taught me to go out of my head and really into my heart, and to
Mm.
really trust and surrender to God, because God's grace is amazing, and that abundant flow is there. And the more I tried to cling on to control and fear, the worse things got. And so when I began to let go, like things started flowing, and it's amazing in the midst of the pain. Yeah.
So what you were referring to your truer self, that has been able to come out.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah.
Hmm. What about your own spiritual practices during this time? Did you immediately discover the ways that would sustain you? Were there passages from the Bible that spoke to you, or did that take a while to kind of come together?
Well, this was the grace about it. I felt like God had really started already preparing me for this. Like I had these scriptures that really have spoken to my heart, that remind me of God's love and grace. So Isaiah 43 and Psalm 121 are constant companions with me. These abiding reminders of God being with us through the fire, through the water, that we won't be burned, that God loves us
Mm.
completely and unconditionally. That really, I had to go back again and again when I started to feel off-centered or caught in fear. or scared again of the abandonment, I just had to like have those scriptures flow over me and enfold me. And I definitely have a different prayer life than I used to have. My prayer life before was a little bit more, this is what I want, God. Here's my day. Here's my week. We can do this together. Let's go. And now I sit and it is, I do offer that up, and I pray over the week or the day, and all of those with prayer concerns and things like that. But it's more of a prayer of surrendering. Use me today, God. Here's another day that you have been given. How can I be a vessel to share your love and grace in this moment? And how transform this experience so that your glory can be made known in and through it. That has been my prayer ever since the beginning of not my diagnosis. And also, help me, Jesus, heal me. But it's been great to have yoga that really is centering, and even in the prayer postures like child's pose and things like that, that gets me into a surrendered position where I'm just like, I'm on the ground and you are there, God. And so I'm very prayerful as I do that. So I feel like my prayer is more bodily kinesthetic than up here cerebral. And that has really changed. And also like this caring bridge, I started writing that at the beginning of it, and that has been a form of meditation for me, where I don't know what I'm going to write beforehand. I sit down, I have my morning ritual where I get my cup of coffee, I do my walking prayer and meditation, and then I come to my prayer chair right here, and I sit down and I just surrender, God, to you and the gifts that I carry, to the readers of Caring Bridge, and make me an instrument of your divine healing presence and grace. And I never know what I'm going to write, and it just kind of flows, and sometimes it hits the mark and other times I don't know, but it's a prayerful time for me, not only to be in the word but with the people and ministering in that way. So things that I would have never expected ever to do, God has created a space for. So that's been really powerful.
Well, one of the things that's occurred to me, and I've mentioned this to you before, is that what a gift it is for someone to be able to be transparent about their struggle and their pain and their suffering with a community of people, and how that is such a ministry to the people. Because most of us are, we deny that we're going through difficult times, or when we go through difficult times, we're not sure if God is around at all.
Yeah.
And my sense is that one of the things that people have resonated with is not that they can live vicariously through you, but it's sort of like you enable them to process their own pain, their own loss, in various ways.
Yeah, that really resonates. And the fact that like death is something that's in all of our faces with COVID. So we're all in some ways struggling with our own mortality. And so how do we do this as people of faith? What does this look like? And I've never done this before, but that openness to being honest about where we are. And there has been like a progression, a change, a deepening, a ripening that has occurred, where as when I first started this, I did really not want to think about death. And now I am like, just, I am dancing with it, and then able to even have a death plan. I know it sounds weird, but like with my children, I did a birth plan and what I had hoped the experience would be like when we had childbirth. And sometimes it followed along, but other times it didn't. And so I felt like that was an important thing to do, to be like, wow, what would that feel like? And who would be there? And, hospice is a great thing. Okay. All of these things, what would I like to have happen? And to really be intentional about that, instead of, oh my gosh, this is so scary, and to really play into it and have fun with it. I know that sounds strange, but it doesn't
What
have
was that like?
it was okay. First of all, I had to have a trusted companion with me. So I had my lady with me. I work with her, and so I had to get all of my tears out. I cried for like 3 hours before I did it, and I got angry, and I broke a couple pencils, and then I got um, I got fearful, so I started shaking, and then I was able to do it, to be there, and to really feel it.
Mm,
And it feels to me like the invitation that Paul has to die before you die, and to die to your old self and to rise in Christ. And so it it was scary, but it wasn't scary, and it was okay because someone was with me. And so, like, I feel like if ever anybody wants to do that, call me and I'll be there for you. I'll hold space. Call Roger. He'll be there for you. Roger, I'm signing you up.
okay.
We can hold space for each other to go there, because you don't want to do it alone. And it's really important to just like be able to be honest about it, and to share
Mm,
your, and to name the feelings. And I think when I named them, they got less scary. And that's when I could, again, like, dance with them a little bit. And so it became a fun exercise. It became a heartwarming thing. And then to even think of, like, what would my funeral service be like, and who would be there, and where would it be, and who would preach, and all of those things. What songs would I want, and what hymns? And that was so consoling, was to
mm,
go to the hymns of faith and to really just have them cover over me, shower over me, and feel them for me, not just for other people. And like, as priests, we are there and we read the scriptures and we do that for others, but then, wow, this is for me too. And this is
mm,
beautiful. Like, Jesus would be right there. There is no instant that I would, like, be dead and like hanging out for a long time. Like, it would be right then and there. Like, wow, how cool would that be? And to be surrounded by light and grace and hope and all of this cloud of witnesses who have been there before me, like, that gave me strength, knowing all the people who have died. Wow, they did it. I can do this too, you know.
yeah.
They might have been freaked out about it, but maybe not. And so, how to, like, really, how to embrace it and not deny it, or to honor the fear, indeed,
Mm,
but to see the gift in it too. And that's where it does lose its sting. I never got that with
mm,
Paul.
mm,
Death you has lost its sting. And I'm like, well, no, death still kind of stings, especially for the people who have been left behind and are still grieving and that sort of thing. But maybe for the person who has gone on to, Roger, you always reminded me this, our great reward. Like, right? um, I love that reminder. And so,
it sometimes has occurred to me that when I'm meeting with families to plan the service for the person that's died, I think, gosh, it's too bad the person that died isn't here
right,
hearing all these things.
totally.
And that somehow the finality of death opens us up to this incredible reservoir of feelings and gratitude. And I made my own funeral plan several years ago. I revise it. One of the things I'm finding is that as my kids get older,
Mhm.
and I'm thinking about who will do something at my service or who I want to, I think, oh my gosh, my grown children, what would they say? And I get very emotional. And I think to myself, I should sit down with them and talk about this. One of the gifts my dad gave me 5-6 years before he died is he sort of talked to me about what he wanted to do, and boy, that just brought up everything.
Yeah.
Um, and I think also, as you've already said, makes it just less scary.
Mhm.
Maybe we can go there.
Yeah.
Maybe it'll be okay.
Mhm. Mhm. And then it becomes kind of a beautiful exchange of memory sharing and all of these things. And whether it's for tomorrow or 50 years from now, what a gift to be able to have that time together to savor,
Mm,
give thanks, and receive the blessing, right? I think of the Hebrew scriptures with all of the children who wanted the blessing of the father or the mother, and to then have the baton be passed or whatever it may be, to invite that time and that space for that. Yeah, it's sacred.
I think another thing that you've said that resonates with me is that um, when we are more aware of our mortality, we're more aware of how much we want to live each of these days. And as the psalmist says, life is short. It's just short. And when you're young, of course, you think it's just going to go on forever. But when I realize I have many fewer years than I've already lived, it's like, wow, don't be doing anything you don't want to be doing. Don't waste time on stuff you shouldn't waste time on. Mm.
Indeed.
What was it like to have conversations with your children?
That was really one of the hardest parts for me, because as a mom, I do want to protect them from feeling pain or sadness,
Mm.
and this would bring that on. And so I was like, there's no denying it. So I have to do this. And yet that has become a gift for all of us as well, because it is that sense of death is part of life and we're all going to do it. And that it's not so scary because we can do it together. And when I was growing up, that was the scariest thing, was thinking of like losing a parent. And
Mm.
my son would always say, well, Mom, you're not going to die today, so it's okay. Let's have a fun day. And I'm like, okay, let's do this. And I would like wallow in self-pity for a little bit. And then they would like cheer me up. And they have an amazing way of living in the moment anyway. And so that has become a true gift for me. And that has become a family joke. Well, you're not gonna die, so let's do this. Though what we can do is somewhat limited in COVID days. So okay, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Especially, it was funny, like my it was hard after we thought that I was cancer free, right? And we had these beautiful, like, oh, looks like the tests are great. And then one little last scan to check the
Mm.
everything. And it revealed small tumors here and then here. And small little guys. We just got to bat those out with chemo. But at that point, I thought, oh my gosh, I can't do that. Like, how do we, after surgery, I've had this really hard and invasive liver surgery that was, I think I went into the dark night of the soul as I was recovering from that, because it just felt like the darkest, most separate time I had ever experienced in my own life of faith. It was really scary.
Mm.
And then living through that, and then having like, oh, the hope, it's going to be gone. Now I can start, living even more fully. And then it was like, don't mess with me, God. I think that's what you and I prayed. It's like, why are you doing this? But when I came back, each one of my kids had a different response. My oldest said, Mom, we've done it before. We can do this again.
Mm.
It's going to be all right.
Mm.
One of my twins said, like, I can't believe this is happening. It's just not fair. Why, God? Why?
Mm.
So angry. So angry.
Mm.
The other twin said, well, you're not going to die tomorrow, so let's have a party today. And then my youngest said, Mom, we pray to Jesus and Jesus heals. You're going to be fine. So
Boy, isn't that kind of the whole panoply of responses? Oh my.
Totally. Yeah. And so just to take it all in and to breathe with that promise of Jesus. Like, that's why for me, Good Friday is so consoling. Like, he felt it all. Like, you've abandoned me, God. Why have you forsaken me? And he's like, I thirst, all of these different things. And then he's like, into your hands I commend my spirit. Like, all of it, living it fully. So nothing I'm feeling or not feeling is separate from that.
Wow.
So that gives me great peace indeed. Yeah. And hope. So, because Jesus does heal. So who knows, right? But to live every day trying to be a vessel and using the gifts that God has given me to be my true self in the world. And if that doesn't resonate with me, I'm like, yeah, I'm not going to do that. No. And now there's a freedom to say no. Like, I'm not doing that. So it feels good.
Yeah.
Pressured or obligated or burdened in that way. So, or to care what others think. There's a freedom with cancer. Here,
Well, I think that's what these other people were saying to me when they said it was the best thing that happened, is that there was a setting free in their experience, which I think says to me that most of us are probably holding on much more tightly than we think, and until it's been sort of hitting you right in the face. One last thing. We have talked about the wide range of emotions with God and all of that. And you've alluded to some of this, but what have you done with your anger? Have you been able to give that to God, throw that at God?
I have this
break things.
I have this journal, and I there are a couple pages that are just and I then tore them out and I put them in my grill and I lit them on fire. I just wanted to release it because cancer in the liver, Chinese medicine says, is the storehouse of anger and resentment and bitterness. And so if I free myself from those emotions, I mean, I'm going to feel it, but not have it be stored in me, then there's that release there, and I'm not like held in that bondage anymore. And so I do that. I go on walks. I walk it out. When I get angry, I go for a walk, and I walk really fast. So I don't take my little children with me because their legs aren't as long. Mom, I can't keep up with you. And I'm like, I got to go walk it out. I'm going alone this time. And so that really helps. And just being in my body and physically feeling that release of that really, really helps. Because I don't want it to come out sideways and hurt them or hurt me going inward or hurt my husband or hurt the dog. How to channel it out. It's got to get out because the anger's there. Yeah. And
maybe it just occurred to me that you're right, that anger may not be helpful for you, but that it may be that other members of the community can let God have it. That I know that's been some of my prayer through this journey, but I'm just thinking that somehow all of the whole community's prayer is part of what's taken to God, and some of it is, God, come on, get this thing done, dang it. You can do this. And some are saying, oh Lord, just give her peace, just give her what she needs. And somehow this is all given up. And and there's this ongoing conversation. And I'm not sure I've ever been aware in this congregation of a situation where there is such a collective, ongoing conversation with God. That it's St. Timothy's conversations with the deity about Lisa, and that's a beautiful thing. And obviously it's sustaining for you, but I'll tell you, I think it's sustaining for everybody that that everybody's relating to this in their own unique way. People that have daughters your age are feeling it in a certain way. Mothers that your age are anything else you want to share before we close up this conversation?
I think just to encourage people to feel what they feel about it, and when they need to reach out, because it's really important to not feel it alone, that you and I are here for them and others, that we're not afraid to have the hard conversations, because we have been there in our own ways at different points along the journey. And that it's amazing that God can create us to be able to feel anger, pain, grief, sadness all at once, and joy, hope, and peace. It's all there together at the same time. And that is what baffles my mind of God's creation. So
yeah.
Do not be afraid. Fear not. God is with you in the midst of it.
Amen. Well, listen, thank you so much for your willingness to share and all that you've been willing to share along the way. I feel like we're just having one more conversation about this. And I would just say to those of you who have joined us that I take Lisa seriously about her offer of conversation about your own journey. And if you want to plan your funeral, I always recommend this to people. I did my first one, I think, when I was 25. There's something about the process of filling out that form and choosing those hymns and readings and thinking about who you want there. I mean, half the people I wanted there when I was 25, they're dead. So I've had to do some revisions, but there's a real gift that can be given. So if you want to sit down sometime and talk about that, or just have an initial conversation on the phone. And I want to thank all of you for all the support that you have given to Lisa along the way. And quite honestly, to me, I think you all know how I feel about this woman. And so I've felt your love as well. And that's really been important. Just a few words about next week. Today we've been talking with someone who is confronting death in her own body, and all that's connected to that. Next week, we're going to have a conversation with Teresa Eisenlohr, who's been a part of St. Timothy's now for several years. And Teresa's situation was that her first husband died very suddenly when he was 51, while they were visiting their daughter on family weekend in college. What must that have been like to just totally out of the blue? Wow. Talk about life being fragile, not knowing what's going to happen. No treatment protocols. It's just over. So I look forward to talking with her and seeing what comes out of that. Week 3, Lisa's going to have a chat with me about my own pastoral work with people who have died, and I'm sure her own pastoral work and whatever comes out of that. And then session number 4, we're going to again open this up to an interactive conversation where you can bring your own questions, your own perspectives into a more collective time together. So again, thanks for being with us. And as we all go throughout this Lenten journey, may we remember those ashes at the beginning of Ash Wednesday, even though we didn't get any this year. But remember that, what does it say in Genesis? That God breathed life into the ashes. That's what gives them life. And may our Lenten journey together be one that fills us with that life of God's Spirit. Lisa, thanks again. Love you a bunch. Love all of you that joined us today. Have a good day. Bye-bye.